The Energy of Abundance, Practical Advice and Spiritual Wisdom to Achieve Anything You Want in Life by Phyllis King. Chapter 3, Death. Daniel Brinkley is someone who has had one of the most profound near-death experiences on record. And his New York Times best-selling book, Saved by the Light, was actually made into a movie. It was so riveting. But Daniel has a wonderful phrase, and it goes like this. The number one cause of death on the planet is birth. You gotta love Daniel's sense of humor. The first question many people ask me is, when did you know you were psychic? When I answer to myself, I would say 19 or 20, though my first memory of the intangible becoming tangible happened somewhere around the age of 5. And at this time, I began to see formless white shapes flying around me and being around me. It was frightening. I remember feeling like their appearance in my life was more of a show or a display. I don't know exactly if that's correct or not. I did begin to sleep with the covers over my head after that, but I didn't question it, didn't speak about it. I just tucked it away. By the time I was in elementary school, I had my first experiences with what I now call remote viewing and spontaneous out-of-body experience. I didn't know what they were called back then. What I knew is that I could be in one place and people I knew were in another, and I would have an awareness of what those people were speaking about or even what food they were eating. And often when that would occur, within an hour, I would unexpectedly find myself in person with these people, witnessing the exact experience I had participated in already. Conversations were verbatim what I heard in my mind. This didn't bother me, however, but my interest was piqued. The feeling it gave me was more of a congruence between past, present, and future. I could see how they all fit together in the same continuum. But again, I tucked all this away and never spoke about it. When I was in my mid-teens, I began to have regular experiences with precognition, mostly through dream state. Most often, I would have a dream about some event, and within 24 to 48 hours, that dream would come to pass. This, again, didn't bother me, but I thought it curious. There were many reasons I never spoke about these occurrences, but I kept them in my memory. And I didn't think I needed to do anything with them. But all of this would change when I turned 19. An acquaintance of mine who was in my circle of friends died in a car accident. His name was Gary. Gary was a small, wiry boy with acne, and he had a very kind demeanor and a nice car for a 19-year-old. An occasion arose when I was invited to a special party at a local resort, and I needed a date. And I asked Gary to go with me, and he generously agreed to come. He was happy to be with me and quite proud. My ego at the time was large, and I thought nothing of using someone in this way, as I wasn't interested in him romantically or even as a friend. At the time, I considered myself generous to allow this person to accompany me. Little did I know that in a very short period of time, this person with whom I gave so little consideration would open the door to my life's purpose. One morning, about 3 months after Gary had died, I awoke to see him standing in my bedroom. He was present in a background of pink and orange, and my immediate thought was, did I sleep until sunset? I rubbed my eyes to double check what I was seeing, and as soon as I realized what was happening, I became terrified. My heart started pounding, my mind was racing, and my adrenaline started running. At that same moment of being terrified, a ghost was in my room. A knowing was suddenly placed in my awareness that life did not end with the body. And suddenly, the entire idea of death shifted for me. I was raised in a devout Christian home, went to church every Sunday, had a set of beliefs about what happens when we die. It did not include ghosts. In an instant, I had a knowing that life did not end with the body. And once you know something, you can't unknow it. And knowing goes far beyond belief. It's like knowing your name or how to breathe. You just know. For the next decade of my life, the experience of knowing became a reoccurring experience. Throughout the 10 years that followed this event, my appetite to understand these intangible occurrences and put meaning to them took me to many places. I involved myself in various courses, workshops, groups, processes, books, experiences with healers, teachers, and anyone that might be able to offer me a sliver of information that explained what was happening to me in my life. This period of intensive exploration became the foundation I built my life around. I didn't care and never cared about being psychic. I actually resisted that role. I was frantically searching for answers and needed to understand what was happening to me. During this potent searching time, I had several awe-inspiring experiences that were truly miraculous. Being able to see auras, intentionally going out of body, experiencing spontaneous healing events, and however incredible those experiences were, the physical act of the intangible becoming tangible paled in comparison to the impact of knowing about unending life. Through these experiences, I was given the gift of a single glimpse, one profound sliver of information into the meaning of this vast and incredible universe. And with that information came peace about the human life experience and death as we know it. It is this knowing of unending life that catapulted me onto a spiritual path and ultimately into the role I hold today. With Gary's appearance, I knew in an instant that life did not have to be taken so seriously. Further, I could and should be fearless and live my life full on. Playing it safe was not an option. And ultimately, we have nothing to lose, only experience to gain. And experience is the cornerstone of fulfillment. So in a moment, I was transformed from being a rather self-absorbed young woman into someone with an incredible sense of peace. So this transformation happened in a second. Then Gary was gone. My fear pushed him back. And in the moment, Gary looked great. He was in a tux, no longer skinny, and looked happy. He shared a moment of gratitude with me. And although I was not my best self with Gary during life, the encounter we had provided a deeper look into the truth and value of human interaction and our ultimate interconnectedness as souls. And it doesn't matter how well you know someone or even what you think of them. Any person can hold a key to your enlightenment at any moment in time. We all have the ability to be profound for each other. And this was Gary's gift to me. For the next 14 years after Gary's appearance, no matter what I was doing in my life, I was in a deep pursuit of my spiritual identity. And I kept this pursuit and the identity I was developing separate from other areas of my life, but it was always dominant for me. And even though I began doing readings at the age of 20, I never called myself a psychic or saw myself becoming a professional psychic. I was just doing me and trying to understand who I was. Today, I describe my role in life as something that chose me. I describe psychic reading as something that chose me. I am capable of filling other roles and being successful, but being psychic or intuitive is more than a role. It's me. And there's much more to the story, but I shared this piece of my history because experience taught me about life being a continuum, that death of the body is a transition from one reality to another reality. And all realities exist at the same time. Some of us have bodies and some of us do not. So I offer this awareness from my personal experience to others struggling to put a frame of hope and trust around their own experiences, including death. The energy of death in a psychic reading is fascinating, and different energies will affect the reading. People come to me hoping to connect to a specific person who has transitioned. And often people come with an expectation, likely learned from television or some other inaccurate source. But sometimes there's so much sadness, people don't know what to expect. They simply come in hoping for relief. And one thing that does significantly impact all sessions is the energy game. The physical body and experience is comprised of dense, slow-moving vibrations. And when we no longer have a body and vibrate in a high-frequency reality, it's a long way to travel to vibrate again in a slow reality where there's so much pain and the awareness is limited. So unless there's a reason or a strong pull for the departed loved one to come back in, the visit is typically quite short. They'll come in and offer what is needed and move on quickly. And it can be difficult to maintain connection once the primary message or purpose for connection has been fulfilled. Now, a common question people ask me is why everyone in the family but them is having dreams or insights about a departed family member. This is most often related to grief. The person not having any experience is in too much pain. And grief, again, is dense and cloudy energy. The departed cannot be seen or experienced when the grief is so dense. Another aspect is that the person not having the dream or experiences is trying so hard to connect. They close down their own receptivity by trying so hard. And from my experience, our loved ones are almost always happy and joyous to have returned to pure essence, where questions about physical life are answered. There's no reason to grieve or worry. Pure essence knows and sees the interconnectedness of all things. Often the departed are laughing, dancing, and quite busy, and they wish peace for us. A reoccurring message is, live your life, enjoy yourself. Don't worry about me, I'm good. Occasionally, there may be an apology or an explanation for hurts exchanged in the lifetime, but most often it's a reassurance to the person still here that they're well, and that they still feel love and love each other. Sometimes there's a message of validation. Someone who has transitioned will show a picture to me of experiences they shared with the loved one, or conversations they had, or they talk about favorite activities they did together. This is always for a reassurance and to offer relief. There's no prove it energy in these communications. In situations where people die from horrific or sudden accidents, there is often a period of disorientation. The departed may speak of shock at the quick transition and not feeling quite ready to go. And even in those circumstances, they do indicate they had some choice over their death timing and when to leave the life experience. Throughout the past 25 years, looking at these situations, it appears most of us have up to 4 opportunities to exit the lifetime. That means we can come close to death up to 4 times, or at least 4 times in a lifetime. And we can choose to come back during the life-threatening event and continue life, or move back to pure awareness. Often with horrific and sudden accidents, the departed tells me they're content with the choice, but they may feel regret for abandoning his or her loved one at that particular time. On occasion, they will tell me they were tired, or that they only consented to be in this reality for a limited period of time, that essentially they never intended to be here long term and serve their time. And I don't mean to suggest that being in the human experience is a sentence or a deployment. Rather, the human experience is a way to expand consciousness in a very specific way, and it is a slow method. It's arduous. But what we learn here really sticks. So when we learn what we came to accomplish and we fulfill the purpose of our soul's desire, we can leave and we bring our experience with us to the collective consciousness. And this allows collective consciousness to expand and grow. It's all perfectly connected. Now, for those who transition by a health challenge, I hear multiple considerations from the departed. The most common story I hear is that the person was learning about unconditional self-love and wanted to teach it to others. Or I hear that the experience was for others, not at all for the departed. The people left behind needed to expand in ways they otherwise would not have if their family member had not departed. Other times, I'm directed to look at long-standing genetic patterns that come with karmic ties and other past-time programming. For example, a family of 5 entities agree to come into the experience to grow, love, and learn together. But the only opportunity that allows them into the experience at the same time is through a physiological system that has a deep genetic code and programming. For instance, I currently have a client who has suffered from breast cancer multiple times. Both her 2 sisters and her mother have suffered reoccurring breast cancer and 1 ovarian cancer. The genetic line for this condition is pronounced, and the agreements they have to share in the experience are also pronounced. But in this family, they are so focused on loving each other and appreciating each other for the time and the moments they have together. They see each other as heroes in their own stories. Their health challenges have bonded them together like none other. It makes their love for one another all the more precious. So in this family, the hardship and loss has been a connecting force and mechanism to experience deeper and more profound love. In my view, there is no such thing as justice or fairness in the human experience. And when we understand that experiences are for our learning and growth, nothing more, we free ourselves from judgments and also excessive pain and hardship in the human experience. And we can become more compassionate with ourselves and others. And when we recognize there is no justice or fairness, learning to play the energy game of alignment becomes much more attractive. Beyond mediumship and connecting to the departed, as with any aspect of life, it's what we choose to identify with as valuable that will cause us joy or pain. When we equalize life's experiences and develop the discipline to see them from the soul's perspective or the higher perspective, it's easier to separate from pain. In my life, I lost twins at childbirth. And I have to say, that was one of the most painful experiences of my life. I don't identify with it very often like that at this point. And you may ask me how I can see value in the death of my children. Well, as a standalone event, not so much. But I have learned how to laugh at myself and laugh at how serious I can become when I sit in the energy of loss. But through time, I have garnered a perspective around the loss of my twins that does bring me great joy. And I say through time, it isn't really time, it's through processing energy and developing perspective. But the joy I have would not be possible but for my experience of loss. Let me say more. The loss spurred me on to develop other aspects of myself I probably wouldn't have otherwise. I had a long struggle with infertility before I became pregnant with my twins. It was not pleasant. And by the time my twins died, I was 100% clear that I was done with pregnancy. No, thank you. I had no interest in any longer in becoming pregnant. However, in a relatively short period of time after their death, I still wanted to be a mother. So I moved into the process of adoption. And I did indeed adopt a girl and a boy. The girl at birth, the boy when he was 5 weeks old. What I can say now is that I cannot fathom, nor do I want to imagine my life never having known the children who are my children today. I would not have the same level of appreciation for the gift of parenthood that I do now, had I not suffered the loss. And these two beings are my children, even if they did not come through my body. My daughter would have gone straight into foster care had I not adopted her. My son was also in precarious circumstances at the time I received him. So yes, in a sense, it was a rescue, but they rescued me as well. So when we're open to it and we aren't fixed on a specific path to our happiness, there's an amazing flow of abundance in life that can always happen if we can stay open. People often choose to close off to life after grief. I did not. Inside this same conversation, prosperity is a shared experience. I was able to receive my abundance, motherhood. My children were able to receive their abundance, family, and society was able to be abundant as two orphans found homes. It's a beautiful marriage. So this principle allows joy to flow in my life and laughter to become possible. I surrendered to a wisdom that is greater than my identification with physical reality. And that surrender paved the way for my greatest joy. So in my practice, I have had more than one family in my office with children who have committed suicide. I have had families in my office whose brothers and husbands have been murdered. When I connect to someone who has committed suicide, they are almost always relieved and they're always sorry too. Much of the session is spent reminding the loved one it wasn't their fault. And these sessions are often the most difficult. The essence tends to keep some of the pain they had in life, but mostly there's relief. Other times they continue the discussion about why suicide was necessary in a new form. And this can be very painful for the person still living. With murder victims, the victim will talk about the event and the passing. It is a sharing done with the intent to offer relief and connection to the loved one, but it carries with it the same sudden death reactions of an accident. And typically in these situations, there are multiple agreements between the murdered and the murderer and karmic knots that have been in place for extended periods of time. Many times the murder was avoidable. The murdered did not listen to their own instincts or guidance. When families are left with unresolved energy, they often hang on to grief because it's all they have left. So my job is to help people not only release grief, but deepen their awareness of the interconnectedness of life. I didn't know this was going to be part of my job when I began my journey as a professional psychic, but it did become part of it. So if I can give people a few moments of relief and a glimpse they can feel at a different reality, I've done a good job and performed the service I came here to deliver. The following is a story and an example of someone dealing with death in a different way. One day on my radio show, a caller, Evelyn, came on the air. She was grieving the loss of her husband, who had passed away 4 years previous. And she was still holding on to the grief as a means of staying connected to her husband. Evelyn was also afraid of re-entering life alone. She was very stuck. When she came on the air, she immediately said, "I'm struggling with a lot of sadness. I lost my husband." Before she could continue on with her story and reinforce her identification with grief, I said to her jokingly, "Where did you lose him?" As if she'd lost her keys, because I felt her identification immediately. Now, many would consider this a controversial or callous statement. I get it. But I knew in that moment, if I had any chance of helping this woman, I had to nearly shock her into a different perspective. I needed her attention. So right after the question of where did you lose him, we talked about her situation and I suggested some options for her to try. And by the end of the call, Evelyn felt relief and optimism for her future. Later, I received numerous emails from listeners who appreciated what happened on the air that day. It was so different than what they anticipated. And Evelyn did indeed shift, and she became a long-term client and friend. And guess what? She is now remarried. Had I not played the energy game with her, she might still very well be stuck. If I were to have just responded to her emotional addiction, I would have enabled her to continue on a path that wasn't serving her. And of course, as I say, some people may find this controversial in some way, but the proof of a value is in the outcome. People heal and are helped when they approach their challenges energetically. That's what this book is all about. True, sometimes timing is everything. Evelyn had 4 years of grieving under her belt. She had a lot of time with her emotions. So the timing was perfect for her to turn on the radio and hear me and call in and get on the air and have the type of exchange we did. There are no accidents. So as I play the energy game myself and teach other people how to play it, I've been able to see it work time and time again in my life and many other people's lives. The act of inserting high level frequencies, especially humor, is tremendously spacious and healing, even if it's not politically correct. When we insert a frequency, it's as if we're taking an Excedrin for a headache, and it has the same impact whether the ego likes it or not, or approves of it or not. Death can be a tricky subject to make light of. People take death extremely seriously. And in so doing, death in every other area becomes difficult to navigate. But if people can separate from their identification as the physical reality, as the total reality, it gets much easier to manage. I lead through example rather than forced opinions. And I trust that people will separate from identifications as they're ready to do so. When people are ready to feel empowered and when they want to be happy, they will open their heart to a state of joy that is available at all times and choose that path. And each of us can choose at any time when to relinquish or claim joy. Death itself is a change in reality. Life does not end with the body. We come to this planet to grow, evolve, love, contribute, and learn. And within that lies a specific purpose to evolve our own soul. And once we fulfill that purpose designated by that specific incarnation, we return to pure awareness. And this is my message about death.